For the Young at Heart is sponsored by Duville Life and Wellness Community, a commitment to care, a legacy of compassion. This is Duville.
Hello, welcome to For the Young at Heart. I'm Lucille Jerome, and on today's program we're going to be taking a look at hoarding. What is it? How does it compare to, say, collecting or maybe cluttering? My guest today is Ray Mailloux, and he is the owner and CEO and president of the Community House Calls, a company based in New Hampshire. And he's been doing this for about 14 years. Prior to that, he has an extensive history with Catholic Charities. He was their president and CEO for many years.
15.
And 15 years in New Hampshire. So without further delay, let's just get on with the program. I'm so glad you came today.
Thanks for having me, Lucille. Pleasure to be here.
We have so much to talk about. Okay. Try to explain to us, what is hoarding? What is it?
What is hoarding? Hoarding is the acquisition of, but more importantly, the failure to discard items that to others would seemingly have no value. And so people accumulate and accumulate and accumulate until their living environment is compromised and it is no longer used for the purpose that it was intended, such as the kitchen can't be used, the bathroom can't be used, the bedroom can't be used, the stairwell to the second floor, if they have one, has become a filing cabinet. And then it further deteriorates down to people that'll become socially isolated because they don't want anybody in to see what's going on, and they become isolated from family, friends, neighbors, and what have you.
So they don't want people coming in to see them, and
right.
I'm assuming people don't want to visit them anymore either because of what, shame or guilt or embarrassment?
Shame, all of that, all of those emotions, absolutely.
So the house becomes unlivable. This is not collecting. People have collections.
Right. I look at, when I'm called into a new case, Lucille, just on a very, very quick purview, if you will.
Sure.
I look around real quickly, and there is, in my mind, 3 levels. Somebody that's a collector, somebody that's a clutterer, and somebody that has a hoarding disorder. I never say the word hoarder because no one likes to be labeled.
Okay.
And that is a judgment when you say you're a hoarder.
Okay.
So somebody that's a collector would be somebody that has collected maybe Hummels or Matchboxes or Snow Babies or things like that, but they're very neat and organized. They are not impacting that living environment or their life in any way, and that gives them happiness to collect these things, but they're not. It's not impacting anything except it's making them happy because they're adding to their collection.
So they're in cupboards or cabinets or shelves. They're
right,
not
on display in a very neat, orderly, clean fashion.
Okay.
Somebody that's a clutterer has a little bit more than a collection, and they may be somebody that is a little more disorganized than others, and so the kitchen table may be covered. The counters may have things scattered. There may be things on the floor. There may be things just all over because they don't take the time to put things away. They just keep them because they're accessible to them, and they just have a lot of stuff. Somebody that has a hoarding disorder.
But if it's limited to the table, it becomes a work area.
It becomes a work area.
That's not really cluttering.
No, because that is not the entire house.
Okay.
A clutterer is going to have those challenges pretty much everywhere. But the passageways are still clear. There's 2 means of egress. You can still use, the appliances. The bathroom is functional. All of that is intact, but there's just a lot of stuff. So I call those people organizationally challenged, and it's easier for them because they are willing to get rid of things. They just don't know how to keep themselves organized.
Okay, so that's an organization
very different.
Issue.
Exactly.
Okay.
Somebody that has a hoarding disorder It's very different because there's a disconnect and they have a hard time divesting of things that have limited or no value. To you and I, to them, it has great value. And so people that have a hoarding disorder, you're going to walk in and you're going to see the kitchen. The stove is covered because the cabinets are full, things have spilled onto the stove, so you can no longer use the stove. The countertops are covered, you can't get to use the countertops to do any meal prep or anything. The kitchen table is obviously cluttered. You go into the bathroom and the tub is full. Around the toilet is full. The sink may have things.
The tub is full.
Full because they've run out of storage space, so they start to use the tub as a storage. So now you're not able to use your kitchen. You can't cook. You might have a microwave just on the side, but you can't use your stove. The refrigerator is so packed you couldn't get anything else in there. And you can't function to do meal prep or serving or what have you in your kitchen. And even more importantly, the bathroom is not accessible or usable by the dweller, which is a hygiene issue. And that creates a whole other set of issues. Passageways aren't clear, and there's not two means of egress in case of a fire. So there's safety hazards, there's health hazards, which you don't really see with a clutterer. You do see with somebody with a hoarding disorder. Okay.
How did you get into this, by the way?
Well, it's interesting, Lucille. My company is really about home.
You're not a hoarder.
Well, my wife would say if you looked at my garage, maybe. I think there's a little bit of, hoarding potential in all of us. It's how we control it and manage it.
And I didn't mean to say it that way.
No, and it's fine. I can't wait to tell you said that. But how did I get into this? My company is really about home modifications and home adaptations and home safety.
Right.
And what happened maybe 6-7 years ago is I was getting calls from the state of New Hampshire and others for people that were self-neglect. An EMT would go in, the passageways aren't clear, and it's like, we were called, and it's like, well, it's about safety. So we started doing it, but that's when I realized that it's not about just cleaning out and pushing things around and reorganizing. There is a disconnect. This is a disorder. This isn't about cleaning. And that's when there wasn't a lot known about it then, and there still isn't now, quite honestly. Started doing my own research and developed some training, because if we're going to try to help these people, you just can't do it for them or to them. You have to do it with them. You have to get them to a different place so they accept help, so they're willing to make changes, and they can differentiate between what do I really need and what do I have to have, and how are these items controlling my life.
And what do I do with some of these items that I'm no longer going to have anymore?
Right.
How to differentiate what is valuable to the person but defined differently?
Right.
Defined differently.
Right.
Okay.
And so we work with them on an individual basis, and every job is different. There is no cookie cutter approach, and use different techniques that we, hope will help that person achieve the outcome. So when I'm starting a job, and I'm doing my first assessment, I'm at that time when I'm interviewing, like we're doing here, and talking, what do I do with this person? I think it's just going to be a one-on-one for a little while, and then I may be able to introduce other staff. But let's start with a one-on-one, because you have to develop a bond and you have to develop a relationship.
I was just going to say that in my field, it would say begin where the client is and form a relationship of trust.
Absolutely, because if you don't have that baseline to start from, you're not going anywhere. And the reality is, no one likes their stuff touched. Right. If you came to work one morning and your papers that you left here, here, and there were there, there, and there, you're going to be upset.
You're right.
Because somebody has touched your stuff. So imagine if you have this disconnect and this control issue over these items, somebody coming in and touching your stuff. How traumatic and how anxiety-provoking that is.
There's an ownership issue.
Absolutely.
It's a real ownership issue.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you build this relationship, and you begin with trust and respect, and they begin to think, okay, this man, this company's, they're going to be able to help me.
Right.
And it starts off looking okay, right?
Right.
So where do you start? Do you pick something that you think is easiest? Do you ask them where they think they want to start? Because you're talking about a house.
Right.
Or an apartment.
An apartment or a condo or what have you. We usually start with safety because that usually
Safety.
because that usually resonates with people easily than other things. Safety. You know what? We've got to get the passageways clear. You need 2 means of egress. We have to get things away from the furnace. We need to get things away from the baseboard because those are potential hazards that could cause a fire. And if there was a fire, how would you get out? So you usually start with safety. And then we look at health issues like I see mouse droppings here and there. I'm assuming you might have had a rodent problem.
Okay.
So let's see how we can get these things contained, because you don't want to be having mice live with you, I assume. So let's button up the invitations so they're not here. So we're going to do health and safety first, and then we're really going to look at, Lucille, what's important to you?
Okay.
And we're going to start small. What's important to you? And we always say to people, we're going to measure success by success. So we're going to work on this counter today, and it's going to stay clear.
It's going to stay clear. So
Right.
you're making an agreement together,
Exactly.
a joint agreement.
Right.
Okay.
Just a couple months ago, I had a lady in Fremont, New Hampshire, and I said to her, Helen, what's important to you in this process? Because her husband had just had it with her. She had to do this. And he was working, and she said, you know what? If he came home tonight, we were able to eat at the table. She said, we haven't eaten at the table in over 10 years. She said, that would be important to me because it would show that I am trying and I'm working towards a different lifestyle. So you know what? By the end of that day, that kitchen table was sorted, reorganized, and they were able to sit down and have their supper.
Okay.
And so that was important to her. And she was elated at the end of the day because she didn't think she could do it, and by herself she couldn't do it. Our program is called Coaching to De-clutter because we're working with the person, not doing it for them, because it never works.
It won't work.
It won't work.
But so she had a sense of pride
Right.
that someone helped her do this table. Then her husband must have been pleased, so she got some more feedback,
Right.
which then builds on, well, let's tackle something else.
Exactly. Let's get
Okay.
to a bigger part.
Okay.
And we oftentimes do before and after pictures because we can revisit with them. Look at what this was and look at what this is now. You can use this whole counter space now that you couldn't use before.
Okay.
And for some people, there was one, it was just a sweetheart of a lady who had really gotten herself into trouble several years ago. I said, what's important to you? She said, my daughter visiting me again. I said, okay, we're going to make that happen then. And so it took a long time to sort, and you really have to sort. You just can't take things and throw them away. It's because you don't know what you're going to find. You've really got to do a careful sort. But at the end of that project, her daughter not only came to visit, she stayed overnight because we had set up a guest room. It was just, you couldn't ask for better than that.
You said something, well, you're saying a lot of things interesting, but one thing that just caught my attention is you don't know what you might find.
You don't know what you might find.
So you really just can't get a dumpster and toss.
No, not at all. We do a very careful sort.
careful.
And a great example of that is one of the first ones we did up in Manchester. The husband had died and he had the hoarding disorder, and the wife said, I just need it all cleaned. There was a back bedroom that they hadn't been in years. So you had to really, things had avalanched on the door, so you really had to go in and pull and pull and pull until you finally got to a place that you could open the door. Anyway, long story short, between the mattresses, so this really does happen, there were these grocery bags. And there were grocery bags and grocery bags. So, it's like peeling away the onion. And then we got to what was then bank bags. Inside those bank bags, he had accumulated, saved over $10,000 in silver certificates. Now, if somebody else had gone in, I should say somebody else, but somebody could have gone in,
Right.
said, oh, those are old bags. Toss them out. She had no idea she had them.
no idea.
No. When I walked out and I said, Phyllis, you got a lot of money here. I don't know how much, but you got a lot of money here. She was just thrilled, obviously.
Okay, right.
So you've got to do a very careful sort. because you don't want to throw out something that's valuable inadvertently or something that's personal. We have, when we start a project, we have what we call a mailbox and a photograph box.
Okay.
So as we're doing the sorts, if we come across things that are mail, and sometimes we find people's car registrations and so on, or what have you, that goes in the mailbox. As we're finding any family photos or anything that would be of that ilk, we put them in the photo box as we're sorting with them.
This takes time.
This takes time.
This takes time.
And I often give, once we get going, we're looking at what I call the 3 Ds. What can we dispose of?
Okay, I'm going to write this down. Dispose. Dispose.
What can we donate?
Donate.
And what can we direct? And direct means, where can we now put this in your house that it's usable and functional for you going forward?
Right.
And dispose of things that are just hazardous and have limited value or no value that they're now willing to get rid of. Old food is usually easy.
Old food?
Old food, old outdated food.
Okay.
Usually that's easy and that clears a lot of space. Things for donate, clothing is a big thing that people hoard.
What do you mean by old food? Do people collect food?
They do. I have a great story from Nashua on that, and very, very quickly. We were called, and she had a 1-room studio apartment. She was on a housing voucher, and they came in for inspection. She failed. And the reason she failed is because she had hoarded food and clothes. And the reason she hoarded food and clothes is because she had seen on a TV show late at night, one of those programs that when the economy, this goes back maybe 6 years, maybe 5 years, when the economy was in trouble, and she was from the Depression. And when she was a child from the Depression, she didn't have enough food to eat and she didn't have clothing, and she was not going to let this happen to herself again late in life. So as things were on sale, she kept buying and buying and buying. But the things were so outdated, they were not edible.
Right.
But in her mind, that's how she was going to protect herself for the rest of her life. So I get it.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, had to help her through it. And at the end, she said, I just see how much money I've thrown away. And she said she was glad to have it done because she didn't want to lose her voucher, obviously. But she said, I see now, should I just panic because I don't have anybody. She didn't have any siblings. She didn't have any kids. She had nobody but herself to depend on. And
she was trying to protect
herself.
Okay.
Sweetest lady.
Yeah. Now, when you leave, this is a project that's completed, and she's feeling okay and good about herself. Is there another set of a group or system that helps her to remain free of this addiction to wanting to protect herself in that manner? I mean, does someone like that even need medication? I don't know.
Sometimes there are medications. Sometimes we're working with a therapist. Sometimes we're on our own. Sometimes we put people on a maintenance program, and we'll go in once every couple of weeks for a while. Then it goes once a month, just to keep them, on the straight and narrow, if you will. And oftentimes we'll go in and do the big, this big service, and then another, like a homemaker or home health aid agency, will be coming in on a regular basis to keep things in check.
This is fascinating for a number of different reasons. And I'm going back now thinking, a person's home is their castle.
Right.
They have a right to live how they choose.
It's a lifestyle. Yeah,
okay?
Can be.
So if it's in their house, that's one thing. But apartments, condos, congregate housing, things of that nature, you're dealing with other people, other families.
Right.
Your safety is not the only issue anymore.
It's not. It really isn't, and that's a big difference. When you're in your own private home, you can pretty much do what you want inside because it is your private home. When it spills onto the street, some town health officers can get involved because it is impacting, the neighborhood, if you will. But when it's an apartment, a condo, townhouse, or what have you, if what you're doing in your apartment or your unit affects the adjacent dweller or somebody underneath, then the landlord has every right to make changes and enforce them.
You mentioned fire is one potential. Okay,
what's that?
You mentioned earlier something about fires being one potential and making sure the heating units are free. What other possible dangers are there?
A pipe burst. I had that with a lady that had a hoarding disorder. Her pipe burst. She was in an apartment. She has an end unit. The plumber could not get to the pipe to easily repair it. because of the amount of hoards. So the water kept pouring, pouring, and pouring. It affected the next neighbor, and then she found herself in trouble. It actually cost this person, I think it was $20,000 in repairs to the neighbor's dwelling.
So that might be neighbors next door, it might be neighbors beneath her.
Right. She was on the ground floor, so it wasn't beneath her, but it was to the
next
side. Yeah.
Okay, all right then. And you mentioned earlier when we were preparing for this that the load sometimes on a floor from belongings.
And that's the exact same house that I was talking
That's
about,
the same
Lucille,
house.
because the water had damaged, you know, it had poured for so long, and it had affected the structural integrity of that dwelling.
Okay.
And because of the sheer weight, this floor joist started to bow, and the wall started to crack. So it just was a snowball effect once that flood happened.
All right then. So you're working with individuals and or families, and they're starting to feel some success.
Yes.
And really feeling success because, you know, they see the progress, they can see it, it's visual.
Right.
It's visual.
Yep.
All right? So the families might start visiting again, they're not socially isolated again. Do sometimes they get a little bit, maybe like a days ago, and maybe it starts to happen again little by little?
It can, of
It
course.
can, it
yeah.
might,
Yeah,
because
old
it's an
habits are
old
hard to
habit.
break. Yeah, old
Okay.
habits are hard to break.
But then if they have someone coming in to help and sort, maybe they're still they're gonna, I think I was told once your habit can be broken, what is it, 5 weeks, you can break a habit in 5 weeks, I think,
Yeah.
if you're really steady at it. I'll have to look that one up. But this piece of cleaning it up, being safe again,
Getting their house back.
getting the house back,
Getting the
being able to live
Yeah.
and use a kitchen as a kitchen.
Sleep in a bed.
Sleep in the bed, take a bath.
Take a bath. I had a woman whose bedroom had become so cluttered, she was sleeping in the tub. And that went on for a while.
So
Oh,
sometimes,
we only have a few minutes left, it looks
oh,
like.
I know.
Let's look at some of the pictures then.
Oh, okay.
Some
okay.
before and afters.
Sure, let's do that. Sure. I don't know how those guys are going to do that. Oh, there they are. There they are.
That was a garage,
gosh.
just walking, and that's
How
the
did you
garage
get
door
in there?
opened. We didn't. We had to go in through the side entrance, but that was a place with a flood.
Oh, wow.
All right, this was a gentleman, David, who was living by himself. His health deteriorated. He had a cluttering issue, but his health deteriorated, and he was hospitalized. And the family called us in. They came up from Massachusetts. This is in New Hampshire to take a look. So that's the living room when you walked in. And see that place in the back?
Yeah.
That's where he was sleeping because he couldn't get upstairs to his bedroom anymore. So he had to climb over that debris and into that bed. And he was hoarding trash because he was afraid he was going to throw something out that he would need. And he had nobody to come and help him. So he saved he saved
everything?
He saved everything.
Okay.
Absolutely everything. And that was just all trash. And that's just after it was done.
Oh, my.
It's actually a very nice apartment when it was
Yes.
done.
Yes.
And he came home, and he's still home. And
he's
now he's got
home.
ongoing services, support
Okay.
services.
Oh, my. Now, there's a kitchen.
Now, there's a kitchen that has kitchens are usually the worst.
They are? Okay.
The living spaces aren't, but kitchens are usually the worst. And we were called in again by the family member who had come up to visit Mom and Dad, and they hadn't been up in like 10 years.
Wow.
And this is the kitchen we walked in. And that's the other side
Where's the
of the
stove?
kitchen. You can't see it. The stove is actually
Okay.
cluttered and covered. And that's what it
looks like. Oh, my.
after it was done.
What a difference.
So that was fun to give them their kitchen back.
Yes, yes.
And this was an interesting one
Such a good
because
feeling you have to help them.
it is. It's like a
Really?
mini home makeover.
Yes.
But this one was interesting because you couldn't open the door fully, kind of like the lady in Manchester spoke about where you couldn't get to the bedroom fully. You couldn't open the door fully. So there was another entrance which you had to use, but when you went to this side of the house to get in, you couldn't open it. And that's when we got it fully open. You can still see it has a problem.
Right.
And then the outcome and it was
There
done.
it is. What a difference, huh?
So it was an interesting one. They all are, Lucille. It's absolutely fascinating.
Right.
And to be able to get people to think differently and make better choices is rewarding.
To make better choices. What a nice way to put that. Yes. To make better choices.
And this poor lady, 93 years old, living alone in Manchester,
Yeah.
And this was her bedroom. And this was the whole room that she slept in. She had a medical episode, was taken out by the EMTs. We were called in by the granddaughter, and that's her bedroom now when she came home from the hospital.
Is this the one where the granddaughter stayed overnight?
No, that's a
Oh, that's a
different
different
one.
family.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that was, and this, another kitchen. That was the top of the kitchen. That's the sink underneath all those dishes. And there's
Okay.
nothing worse than for odor, which can permeate the whole house, than sitting dishes in dirty water. It's absolutely offensive.
Okay.
And then this was below that, that sink. That's how bad it was.
Well, they're also,
And that's what it was
oh,
after.
look at that.
So they're usually very nice
Yes,
places.
yes.
And a lot of people, I got to make a point, a lot of people think that people that have hoarding disorders are from the lowest socioeconomic
Okay.
levels of society, and it is so
It's not
untrue. It is a myth.
Oh, wow.
Most of the people, and I'm going to say 80% of the people that we've dealt with are doctors, nurses, scientists, engineers, social workers.
Bite your tongue.
But they're people that have a professional background, well-educated.
Right. And they
But they
do
just have a
this.
disconnect. They just have a disconnect. They can
Now,
function.
how does that develop? One wouldn't think that if someone's an engineer, they're neat freaks,
Yeah.
one would think.
In the workplace they are. Come home, it's chaos.
Okay,
Come
okay.
home, it's chaos.
All
Yeah.
right then.
It's interesting. It's very different than what most people would think.
You're right. You're absolutely correct. Because when I prepare for this, I do chat with a lot of different people, and one of the assumptions was that it was lower class.
No, not at all.
Okay.
No,
All right,
not
that
at
was
all.
an
Not
assumption.
that it can't be, because like every
Right,
walk
sure,
of life,
sure,
you
sure,
find everything. But
sure.
it's mostly professional.
Now, nurses, what would they be hoarding? Teachers, I can see them hoarding maybe supplies for schools, maybe. But what would nurses be hoarding?
Whatever important to them.
Whatever's important.
Yeah.
That's really the bottom line.
That really is
Whatever's
an
important to
thing.
them.
And
Okay.
oftentimes, once you get to know somebody, and, and it takes a little bit of time for them to let you in, trauma can trigger people to hoard. I had a woman that lost her son at 7 years old, her mother and her dog all in a week. And she was recently divorced, and from that point on, she couldn't get rid of anything because it was one more loss. She couldn't part with it. She had lost so much in such a short period of time. She could not let anything else go, so she just kept accumulating. And for a lot of people, it's
She
control.
couldn't handle another loss.
She couldn't handle another loss.
So it's a loss issue for some people, it's a control issue for other people,
Correct.
okay?
So and everything in between.
And everything in between.
Because you know what? When people control the inanimate objects, don't talk back.
Well, they might not talk back, but we're running out of time.
Well, that's
And
disappointing, isn't it?
I know,
It flew.
I know.
It absolutely flew.
It really did fly by. I want to thank you so much for coming today and sharing your experience and your wide knowledge base.
Thank you.
This has been an eye-opener, and I know our audience is going to be pleased to have learned something. In summary, one thing, one pearl from you, one little pearl.
Don't be judgmental.
Yes.
You haven't walked in their shoes.
That's right. That's right. Thank you so much, Ray.
Thank you, Lucille.
Okay.
For the Young at Heart is sponsored by Duville Life and Wellness Community, a commitment to care, a legacy of compassion. This is Duville.